Hello, welcome to my channel. In this video we will be looking at the fascinating rise and fall of the Swedish Empire. Please, enjoy. Part 1. Rise of the Swedish Empire. The Swedish Empire emerged in the early 17th century, during a period of great political and economic change in Europe. At the time, Sweden was a small and relatively insignificant country, but it was ruled by a series of strong monarchs who were dedicated to making their country bigger, better, and stronger.
The first of these monarchs was Gustavus Adolphus, who was born on December 9, 1594, and came to the throne in 1611, at just age 17.
Gustavus Adolphus was a brilliant military strategist and leader, and he led Sweden through a series of successful wars and campaigns that expanded its territory and influence throughout Northern Europe. In particular, Gustavus Adolphus was instrumental in the 30 Years' War, a conflict that raged across Europe from 1618 to 1648. During this war, Sweden emerged as a major military power and gained control of vast territories in Germany, including parts of Bavaria, Bohemia, and Pomerania. But the rise of the Swedish Empire was not just due to military conquests. Sweden also had major growth economically during this time. This was because Sweden had great natural resources that it used for trade, such as timber, copper, iron, and more. By the mid-17th century, the Swedish Empire had established itself as a somewhat major player in European politics and military affairs. Under the reign of Queen Christina, who came to the throne in 1644, Sweden became a cultural and intellectual center of Europe, attracting scholars, artists, and scientists from all across the continent. During this time, Sweden also continued to expand its military and territorial power. In 1655, Sweden invaded Poland, which led to the creation of a Polish-Swedish Empire that controlled much of Northern Europe, including parts of modern-day Poland, Lithuania, and Latvia. This marked the beginning of a period of Swedish dominance in the Baltic region, which lasted for several decades to come. The Swedish Empire also established a powerful navy during this time, which allowed it to control important trade routes and expand its influence overseas. Sweden established colonies in the Caribbean, including St. Barthélemy and Guadeloupe, and it also had a significant presence in India, where it established the Swedish East India Company. Part 2. Peak of the Swedish Empire. By the end of the 17th century, the Swedish Empire had reached its peak in terms of military power and territorial influence. Under the leadership of Charles XII and King Charles XI, no, not that one, this one, Sweden only got bigger, stronger, and wealthier. The reason the Swedish army was so strong was pretty simple. Sweden now had a great economy. For the reasons I mentioned earlier, the empire was able to supply their soldiers with very good, reliable equipment. The soldiers were also very disciplined and loyal to their homeland. Sweden's territorial expansion during this time was impressive, to say the least. In the east, the Swedes had already taken control of Livonia and Estonia, and they had set their sights on neighboring Russia. Charles XII launched a campaign against Russia in 1700, with the goal of expanding Sweden's influence in the region. The Swedish army was able to quickly defeat the Russian forces, and by 1709, the Swedes had reached the gates of Moscow. This has only happened a few times in history, and is a major part of not just Swedish history. However, after taking control of the city, the tide began to turn against Sweden at the Battle of Poltava in 1709. The Swedish army was defeated by a Russian army led by Peter the Great, and Charles XII was forced to flee to the Ottoman Empire. Despite this setback, Sweden continued to hold its territories in Northern Europe, and it maintained its position as a major European power. At the height of its power, the Swedish Empire controlled vast territories in Northern Europe, including modern-day Sweden, Finland, Estonia, Latvia, and parts of Norway, Denmark, and Germany. Yeah, Sweden was now a lot more than an ambitious little country now. It was an empire, a good one. Part 3. Fall of the Swedish Empire. The death of Charles VII was basically when the Swedish Empire began to collapse. Sweden lost many of its overseas territories, including its colonies in the Caribbean, its foothold in India, and its territory in modern-day Finland. The loss of Finland was particularly devastating, as it had been a core part of the Swedish Empire for centuries. In addition to territorial losses, Sweden faced significant political and economic challenges in the 18th century. The country's neighbors, including Russia, Prussia, and Denmark, began to assert their own dominance in the region. Russia emerged as a major power in the Baltic, and it began to challenge Sweden's control of the area. Sweden was also beset by economic troubles, including a severe shortage of silver, which hampered its ability to fund its military, and as I mentioned before, its expensive military equipment was very important. Despite these challenges, Sweden remained an active participant in European politics throughout the 18th century. The country was involved in several conflicts, including the Great Northern War, which lasted from 1700 to 1721. In the latter half of the 18th century, Sweden underwent significant political reforms, including adopting a new constitution in 1772. The country also played a key role in science and mathematics, with prominent Swedish thinkers and scientists making important contributions to fields such as botany, chemistry, and economics. Despite these achievements, Sweden's influence on the European stage had waned significantly by the end of the 18th century. The country was no longer the dominant power in Northern Europe, after losing a gigantic chunk of its territory and economy. However, the legacy of the Swedish Empire continued to be felt in the cultural and intellectual life of Europe, and it remains an important chapter in the continent's history. And hey, at least Gustavus Adolphus ended up reaching his goal of making Sweden great. Not did Sweden become a major part of European history, but it is still a very relevant and successful country today. It now still has 528,447 kilometers squared in size and a GDP of $635 billion. I hope you enjoyed today's video. These videos take me a while and they aren't easy to make as I have to balance school and YouTube. If you liked this video, like and subscribe, and maybe even watch some of my other geography/history videos. Have a good day.